This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Liverpool 0, Burnley 1. Ashley Barnes penalty 7 minutes from time ends the Reds' 68-game unbeaten run at Anfield as Liverpool fall into a full-blown goal-scoring crisis. Welcome along to the debrief here on the Blood Red channel as we look to provide the answers as yet more questions appear from another goalless showing. I'm Guy Clarke, Matt Addison here with me. Matt, how do you react to that one?
I mean, it's becoming a bit of a habit, isn't it? It's there's not too much more different that you can say about that compared to the last 4 games, really. And Liverpool just didn't look like scoring a goal. I mean, Divock Origi went through on goal. That was the huge opportunity for them to change this game and put themselves in front. But even then, you never really felt fully confident that he was going to put that in the back of the net. He hits the bar, and that really was the only proper chance that Liverpool created. There wasn't really too many other opportunities in that second half. You felt like, it was sort of edging towards a 0-0. You never felt that Liverpool would score. Then obviously Burnley go in front. And from that point, you never felt that Liverpool would equalise. So yeah, it's certainly at the very least bordering a crisis. I think there will be a lot of uses of that particular word over the next few days. And look, the longer this goes on, the worse it gets. But at this moment in time, I think for a lot of Liverpool fans, it won't really feel like it can get much worse. I think this was almost rock bottom. You certainly hope it is, because with Manchester United to come at the weekend, you almost fear for Liverpool going into that one, because they just look at a complete shadow of themselves at this moment in time.
It seems the confidence is completely gone, as you say, whether that be goal scoring or throughout the team. Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold at the moment really struggling to create chances as well.
Yeah, it's just the whole team, isn't it? It's one of those things where we've spoken all week about there being a knock-on effect on certain players with injuries, and there's no doubt that has played a huge part. But I mean, every single player really, all across the pitch was off it. In stoppage time, you saw Trent try and pass the ball to Robertson, just played it straight out into touch, and that pretty much summed up really certainly the second half. I thought there was a period in the first half where things looked slightly promising without ever, fully going towards what we know that Liverpool can do. But look, it's one of those games really that Burnley didn't really have to try too hard. They didn't really have to do anything special. There wasn't anything that Sean Dyche set up his team, any differently to how they would normally or anything like that. It's just the case at the moment that if you put bodies behind the ball and sit back and let Liverpool come onto you, they don't seem to have any ideas really, and that's the worrying thing, isn't it? You saw Thiago was there tonight, Trent, Robertson, all of these players that you think have got that quality, they've got the extra touch. You just think surely one of them has got to step up to the plate, but not at all, not throughout the entire game. So yeah, that's the thing for Liverpool. Nobody is playing particularly well at this moment in time, and unfortunately it's just one of those periods for Liverpool. I suppose it's even more difficult to take, and it's even more confusing and difficult to explain, because we've known that Liverpool have been at such a high level for such a long time, but they just have to get back to some sort of form. Even if they'd have just scraped a 1-0 win over the line there, it would have felt absolutely enormous, which at the start of the season, if you'd have been talking about that, I mean, nobody would have believed you really. But yeah, it's a million miles away from where Liverpool need to be. And look, the title hasn't gone yet, purely and simply because the other teams have dropped points as well. But if this carries on for another 1 or 2 games, I think we are very, very fast approaching that time where, Jurgen Klopp said it last week, even, Liverpool would have to just focus on the top 4 and forget about retaining the league, because they're certainly, not attacking the league at this moment in time. They're barely even mustering enough to defend it.
Yeah, keep your responses and your comments coming in, whether you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, the good, the bad and the ugly. We'll try and get as many of them on screen as we possibly can. We've got one there from Eric on the screen right now. Can't start Origi. Shaq okay, but not Origi. 2 big changes, certainly to the forward line. Roberto Firmino and Mohamed Salah starting on the bench. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Divock Origi both starting. I know we spoke in the build-up to the game that maybe one of them might come in, but the 2 of them for 2 experienced forward players. I suppose that tells you that Jurgen Klopp realises there is a problem, even if he's not letting on to the press.
Yeah, I mean, something had to be done, didn't it? I mean, I know Dan Morgan on the Liverpool.com podcast earlier this week suggested that maybe you take out one of Salah or Mane and put them on the bench so that it gives you an option to come off and do something in the second half and change the game, because we've not seen Liverpool. I mean, we've not seen Liverpool score at all, but we certainly haven't seen them score in the second half or provide a second half onslaught to change the game for a long time. And I thought there was a little bit of sense in that. I think that was a decent idea, and I think that's probably what Jurgen Klopp has tried to do. But I think you take out one of them. I don't think you take out two of them for a game that was really must win for Liverpool, wasn't it? I mean, it's one of those where you could understand it if maybe one of Salah, Mane, Firmino came out and you used them off the bench, but to take out two was a strange decision for me. I think Divock Origi has had plenty of chances. I said, in Blood Red on Monday that it would be a massive shock if Origi started or even played a part in the game, because he's just looked miles off it this season. He's nowhere near good enough for what Liverpool needed him to do, and unfortunately he's just proven me right. I mean, he's done very, very little. As I said before, when he went through on goal, you didn't fancy him to score, which for a striker with so much space and time in front of the goal, for that to be the case is a pretty damning indictment, really, of the performance that he's been on. So, yeah, it was a strange decision, I think, to play him at all. I think it was another strange decision, really, to play Oxlade-Chamberlain on the right of the front three and Shaqiri in the midfield. I know Shaqiri has played there this season, and that's sort of become his position. But when you've got Oxlade-Chamberlain in the front three, it's almost not fair on him, because he's coming back from injury. I think he'd played 79 minutes of Premier League football before tonight. Has not looked anywhere near his usual self, understandably, up until now. And then to put him into the team, but to put him out of position in a position he's never really done it for Liverpool throughout his entire career. He's never really been a natural wide player, certainly in that 4-3-3 system that Liverpool play. So it was a real strange one for them. So I thought there was a couple of strange things with the lineup, the way that Liverpool set up. But even with that being the case, you can't put the performance and the way that they all performed individually and collectively down to that. It was very much a case of everything going wrong. So yeah, Origi, Shaqiri, Oxlade-Chamberlain, no problem really with two of those three being in the side, but certainly not in those positions.
Yeah, look at the stats quickly. Liverpool did have 27 shots. They've not maybe been having as many shots in recent weeks, but they did have 27 tonight, 6 on target, 10 off target, and 11 blocked. I suppose shows the bodies on the line approach from Burnley defensively, but Liverpool never really sort of moved the ball quick enough to actually open up a clear sight at goal. Salah had the shot saved after Wijnaldum's run, Divock Origi, of course, and Firmino had that one blocked on the line, whereas Burnley get presented with the opportunity to get a penalty. Alisson Becker not happy with the award of the penalty, but at the end of the day, they got it and they stuck it away.
Yeah, I mean, it was a penalty, wasn't it? It's one of those which I think Ashley Barnes is looking for. And I think if it's a Liverpool player doing that, there's quite a few people suggesting that he's gone down very easily, but there was contact. It is a penalty. And I don't think Liverpool can have any complaints with that. He was just slightly late and his leg does catch him as he goes over. So, yeah, from that perspective, you can have no complaints. But in terms of the shots, I mean, 27 attempts at goal, but not many of those were really direct opportunities that you would think, Liverpool could have done more with. There was one or two that sort of opened up and they fired over. You think of the free kick that was worked to Trent in the first half. I think that was just close to half time, but it went miles away. And most of the 27, I think, were blocked or were from a position where if they were going to find the back of the net, it would have had to have gone through about 7 or 8 Burnley players. So, yeah, it all comes back to moving the ball quickly, making the most of those opportunities. And Liverpool just didn't quite do that. They seemed to come back a lot. They seemed to try and work the ball into a position, but really, really slowly and not quite with enough incisiveness and sharpness. And as much as I say, Xherdan Shaqiri, I thought was the right player to come in. I think he's shown good signs of late. He was, as guilty of it as anybody, really, not quite getting that final ball right. And, when you're talking about somebody who you would normally look to for that to be the case, for him to be that far off it as well, I think just sort of underlines where Liverpool went wrong. So, yeah, it was a difficult performance in all sorts of regards. But yeah, that was the frustration, that even when there was a glimmer of hope for Liverpool to get themselves into a good position, they just didn't quite make the most of it. And look, it's not a massive shock, is it? It's something we've seen now for a few games. It's very, very much sort of a I would say, a pattern now. It's becoming ingrained, and you're struggling, to be honest, to see where it changes and where it turns around. I think you need a scrappy goal. You need something to go for Liverpool, and possibly that could be the thing really for them to change and go forward and make the most of the rest of this season. Because, as I said before, if this continues for one or two more matches, we could be looking at the season being over, turning into February, which is absolutely crazy.
Well, that is... Well, actually, before we go, just wanted to ask you, in terms of Jurgen Klopp, we've got the picture obviously on the background with him looking very frustrated. There was the incident at half-time. He was on the pitch after the game with Addison, remonstrating with the referee. That seemed to sort of characterise Liverpool's evening, the frustrations coming to the fore and a lack of composure.
Yeah, a lack of composure, a lack of anything really, but composure I think is something for Liverpool. It is about that imagination and composure when you're on the ball, but it's about composure when you're defending as well. I mean, there was a few sort of refereeing decisions. I know a couple of people have put up in the comments section about the handball, which I think is one of those I should quickly mention. It's one that in the first 3 or 4 games of the season that would be given as a penalty, but it's one that the rule has since been changed and wouldn't be given. So there's going to be no complaints on that. The thing on half time, again, it's one of those which was almost, very, very little in that. I don't think there was really too much to look at, but it was one of those, as you say, the sort of composure was lost by Liverpool just as they think it's half time, and they are getting frustrated and visibly frustrated as well, which I think just plays into Burnley's hands even more. You want them to sort of be calm and just get on with it and move on with the game. But yeah, they seem to be getting frustrated with the referee. They seem to slow the game down at every opportunity, Burnley. And it's something that we saw not so much last season, but the season before with Liverpool was a frustration quite a lot when teams would come to Anfield and sort of hold on to the ball on throw-ins, on goal kicks and things like that. Last season, you didn't really see it because normally, with an hour gone, the game was done. Liverpool were 1 or 2 goals up and it didn't really matter. So, yeah, there's a few different frustrations, and it does come back to what you say. Composure, I think, is hugely important for Liverpool in all sorts of different ways. But certainly the incident on half-time just sort of summed up that, really. And, yeah, it is frustrating, but you do have to sort of manage those frustrations, get over them, and that is how you win the games. And unfortunately, Liverpool just not quite in that groove at this moment in time.
Final one before we go then. How do Liverpool put this right? Manchester United, of course, in the FA Cup to come, but then I suppose a tricky-ish run of fixtures in the league coming. Tottenham away before a trip to West Ham, Brighton come to Anfield, and then Manchester City and Leicester City by the middle of February. The games aren't going to get any easier for Liverpool.
No, incredibly difficult games, and games which now are going to be different to tonight's game. I suppose that's the only sort of positive, that you'd think that someone like a Leicester or a Manchester City next month, they're not going to come in and sit in. But Liverpool, it's all about sort of going back to the drawing board, really, starting again, trying to find a goal, hoping that they can do something on Sunday. I think the fact that Salah and Firmino didn't start tonight suggests that Jurgen Klopp might be taking the FA Cup a little bit more seriously than what I first thought. But yeah, it's so difficult really to sum up how Liverpool improve, because basically they have to improve everything. They have to improve defensively. They have to improve in terms of composure. They have to in terms of build up, in terms of finishing. Every single element has to improve, and it has to improve quickly, because, as you say, the run of games that Liverpool have got to come over the next few weeks is incredibly difficult. At the same time, you look at Manchester City's run of fixtures, and they've got games which you'd fancy them to win pretty much every week. So I think if City win their game in hand in the Premier League now, they will be 7 points ahead of Liverpool. You can only imagine, really, that could extend even further by the time they play them in 4 or 5 games' time. So Liverpool, it's not really about the performances. Obviously, the performances have got to improve, but it's all about just getting some results over the line, really, because if they don't start to do that quickly, we, as I say, could very, very easily be talking about, potentially not even getting into the top 4, because I think this next sort of 4 or 5 weeks is going to be huge. It's going to be season defining. And I suppose that really starts with Old Trafford on Sunday. If Liverpool can win that, it puts them in the right frame of mind. It gets them on the right track. But you're just not confident that can be the case at this moment in time. I mean, if they were to go out of the FA Cup and then lose, say, to Tottenham next week, you're in an even bigger crisis, and you're wondering, where did Liverpool go from here? But look, it's one of those runs. I think you just have to keep your fingers crossed that this will change at some point sooner rather than later. Liverpool have got big changes to make. The difficulty is that we know the injury situation. They can't make wholesale changes. They simply don't have enough of the players to do that. So, look, it's going to be one of those. They have to find something. They have to find a way to win, be it on Sunday, be it a week today against Tottenham. They have to find a way to turn this around. And you would hope that is all it takes. If they get one win, they find a way back, they start to play a little bit better, in a month's time, things can look very, very different. But yeah, at the moment, it does feel very, very low in every single regard, really, for Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool's Anfield invincibility has gone then after 68 games in the Premier League. Since April 2017, the Reds hadn't tasted defeat at home. They've gone down this evening 1-0 at home to Burnley. In the sequence they didn't want to continue, 4 games now without a goal for Jurgen Klopp's side. Stick with us here on the Blood Red channel. Jurgen Klopp's post-match press conference is to come in full. But from myself, Guy Clarke, and Matt Addison, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.